Hello, Hopsackers. I'm here with Ciara Wright.
Yes.
Ciara Wright, got it right, of Glenville Nutrition. Today, I wanted to have a chat with Ciara because a few months ago, actually probably a couple of years ago really, I started to get interest in DNA analysis. There's an awful lot of chitter chatter online about the usefulness of DNA analysis and what it can tell you about and what it maybe, sort of gives you sort of precursors towards certain disease possibilities, and there's a lot of controversy in the media about it. Namely, Angelina Jolie is probably the biggest, I suppose, news story that came from this. Was her. She had apparently, as a result of a DNA analysis, a 95% chance of developing breast cancer, and she had a double mastectomy. So that's the
and hysterectomy, I think.
Hysterectomy as well. Okay,
Yeah, so
wow. So she really took it to the nth in terms of looking at her DNA, and rather than looking at maybe the transposition into what her lifestyle might influence in that DNA, she just went the whole hog and said, "Okay, I'm ruling out the risk."
Yeah.
So that was, I suppose, that was probably one of the bigger stories around DNA analysis. But I was more interested in just seeing the small quirks around my detoxification ability, or lack of, as we'll find, potential for metabolizing coffee, for potential
Weight
diet
gain.
allergies, weight gain. I know, yeah. Well, I'm working on that. I'm trying to get some weight on me, and those things. Oh, salt sensitive, all sorts of things. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose my first question for you. So, when people go to do something like this, what is the main practitioner, and what do you, how do you use it as a tool? What do you see it as being useful for?
Yeah, I suppose a lot of people will use it for weight management because they're struggling, they're wondering why there's an underlying reason why they're struggling. But like yourself, maybe just out of interest, although it's an expensive interest.
Very expensive interest, as I found out.
Yeah, exactly. So most people will do it when they're struggling with an issue, and which is predominantly weight management.
Okay.
And there is sections to the test that we use that is nutrition and exercise, so it can be useful in that regard, whether you're going to get more benefit out of doing resistance training rather than cardio. So there's a bit of that as well. But I suppose to start off with, to say, like this is all just nutrition testing, really. None of the diseases, the genetic predisposition to diseases, are included in this. That is kind of a whole different kettle of fish, like you alluded to. People taking drastic actions on the back of that, or becoming really, really worried about their, implications for Alzheimer's or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that kind of involves genetic counselling and really understanding what the risks are before you go and really get worried about things.
Genetic counselling? I'd never heard that term before. Do we have genetic counsellors here in Ireland?
I don't know.
But they do exist in it.
Well,
as a
I mean, I think that's something a doctor could do.
Okay, you're not talking about getting your DNA into in a lying down position and weeping about the things their parents did.
No. So you would get somebody to go through the realistic severity of your results and the impact of them, so that you don't just go, "Oh my God, I'm going to get Alzheimer's in 5 years," and then panic.
Yeah, so real.
So you need somebody to explain it to you.
Interpretation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very much so. That's why I have you here. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. In these nutrition tests, there's no life or death situations.
Yes,
It's just some things that you might be able to, incorporate into your life and keep an eye on your salt intake for. And it's definitely not black and white. I really want to stress that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a colleague of mine used a really good phrase in which she said, "These are your genes on the day you were born."
Yeah.
It's genes plus environment. So there's been 30 whatever years, I don't know what age you are.
33.
33 years of
abuse.
Environmental impact.
Abuse
I doubt
and
that
quick recovery.
very much.
Sudden dawning realisation of oh my God, I want to live longer than I thought.
I better stop.
Yeah.
So 33 years of genetic regulation, changes to how much how you express those genes and everything. Even actually the 9 months you were in the womb, there can be influence on what our genes get expressed.
Hugely.
So these are the genes that you have. That's the blueprint. So a gene is a code for a protein. How much of the protein you make then is determined by loads of different factors. Signals from your body whether you need to make more or need to make less. And then there's, a lot of talk about epigenetics.
Yeah.
So epigenetics is how your body turns on and turns off genes. So this is just your blueprint,
Yeah.
and it does not define you.
Yeah.
So you know, you can change it and you can modify it.
That's the empowering message, isn't it? Yeah. So
very much so. It's, don't panic.
There's a great analogy they do where if you're say your body is the gun, your DNA are the bullets, but it's your lifestyle that pulls the trigger, and it really is that profound, isn't it? Like there's
100%.
a really interesting study I'm reading recently about. I don't know, everybody probably knows this one, but it's about how if a mother overeats while their child is in the womb, their child essentially is genetically pre-programmed to switch off calorie burning and to encourage calorie storage, because there's this anticipation, which is amazing really when you think about it, that we have this amazing built-in ability on it. Oh, there's a winter coming in terms of feed sources here. My mother is like overfeeding herself because she thinks there's going to be a famine essentially. And so the child, and even the child's child, will have that same. So it actually transfers over 2 generations.
Yeah, it's the whole problem with childhood obesity, to be honest.
It's a huge part of it. Exactly.
Pre-pregnancy, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just how we feed our kids; it's how we feed ourselves as well.
100%.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the other factor, I suppose, and I'm trying to think what I was going to say there now.
I don't know. But yeah, there are so many factors to it. And like in terms of our. Go on.
I suppose we don't use it as a black and white tool because it's not. We really use it as a motivating factor.
Okay,
so that should be a secret.
Yeah, oops, cat's out of the bag.
Yeah. So, for instance, in the exercise ones, there's some that show you how much your motivation is and how maybe your pain tolerance is lower than others. So you're on the treadmill and you're killing yourself to do 4 kilometers.
My pain tolerance, was that in there?
Is
that in my...
Possibly,
I didn't even see that.
Or your injury risk and all these kind of things, right?
Okay, sorry, go on.
So you think you're killing yourself trying to get to a 5K. He's got way higher tolerance than you, so actually it's easier for him.
Yeah.
So in that way we say to people, we understand that you hate exercise.
But you're going to have to push it harder than the next guy.
Or go and find something more enjoyable. Don't go to the gym and stand beside the guy who makes it look bad, makes you feel bad.
Go to a class full of people who all have the same genetic pool as you.
They all hate it.
Yeah.
So we use it as a motivating factor, really. And also, the other part of it is that these are based on relatively limited studies. This is a huge field, and this, you know, in the future, I mean, I remember reading an article that was written, say, 10 years ago, and they said, in 10 years' time, we'll have tailored nutrition where you can give a blood sample, go in, and they'll say, okay, here you go, here's your meal plan. But we are way off that. 10 years was very ambiguous.
It's just you kind of can't, though, can you? I mean, like, because you would have to be inside the person's body to give them the meal plan, because there's too much. I mean, we still don't know what the microbiome's doing, and there's so many other things
but also this is like, if you think about the amount of genes in your body, there's a tiny selection that have been studied. So when it says, for example, a couple of the genes that you have that show that you have, you can take a moderate amount of carbohydrates and you won't have an increased risk of diabetes or obesity or anything. Like they're based on it. DNA Fit's a good test. They have a minimum of 3, you know, high value studies that they have to prove that point. But at the same time, they're looking at one tiny mutation in a giant gene in a whole body of genes.
It's almost not. It's not causality, really, is it? It's epidemiology, really, isn't it? Like it's the incidence or the coincidence rather than.
Absolutely, and there's so many confounding factors. Exactly. So, like I said, we kind of use it as a motivational tool, and sometimes, you know, it really clicks with people if we say, well, actually, you do better on a moderate amount of carbs and lower saturated fat, and they kind of go, I know, do you know, I tried all those low carb diets and it didn't really work for me.
That's really interesting. And me, luckily, I find, like, I was for many years living with a partner that was celiac, and I found myself, I cut out wheat entirely just because you do, because you want to make life easy. And dairy as well. Dairy was dairy's pretty much gone, not totally. But a lot of those things that I would have instinctively and intuitively kind of eaten a lot of as a child, I would have had an awful lot of pasta growing up because, hey, it's simple. And since we split up, I found myself kind of going back towards that, and only had the analysis and the results since then. And I never felt bad on wheat. I never had a problem with it, and it's really interesting because there's so many people who have come through our store now who, you know, are either listening to the internet or listening to their friends, but not listening to their bodies about what is suiting them and not suiting them. And one of the things, this is a real enabler for me because I have a celiac predisposition which is close to 0 essentially. And it's true, I do digest well, I don't bloat, and I don't have a problem. I have loads of other things I do causing problems, chickpeas, etc. But but for some reason wheat doesn't. And it's nice to be able to, it sort of clears the mist around those things a little bit.
Yeah,
and
again,
even though,
that's
within
celiac
limits.
specifically.
Yes, it's
so
not to
wheat
say
intolerance, kind of all different
there's
things.
so many other,
but you got the green light on the celiac, and that's not, again, so like something like 95% of celiacs will have that gene.
Okay.
But there's going to be a 5% who
that don't. They have mysteriously don't.
Well, there's a couple of other alleles that you can have and still fit into that kind of bracket.
That's very interesting.
In saying that as well, an important point for that one, almost 50% of Irish people have that gene. Over 50% in the west of Ireland because of these migration patterns.
Interesting.
Migration west. So there's not 50% of celiacs in Ireland. Right. So if you looked at that and let's say you had a high predisposition to celiac, and oh my God, I better take out wheat.
Okay.
That's not applicable to everybody either, so you have to be careful.
And are there broad scale studies that show exposure to wheat increases?
Yeah, absolutely. So lifelong exposure to wheat, if you have those genes, may increase your incidence of celiac disease later in life. So you might want to cut it down, but you might not want to cut it out altogether.
Yeah.
Now, listen, you or I taking out wheat, and presumably all the listeners of this, will be well able to have a balanced diet and make sure that they're not, missing out on key nutrients.
For sure.
But a lot of the media give out about people randomly taking out gluten out of their diet, just eating the rubbish gluten-free foods that are full of additives, not replacing it with, buckwheat and good stuff. Yeah, exactly. So, if you're able to take it out successfully and have a balanced diet, that's fine. But otherwise, maybe just reducing it would be fine if you had that gene.
For shiz, okay. One of the other reasons I was really interested in doing this was methylation. So methylation is a big term. So
and very complicated.
Pretty nebulous almost as a topic, and it's not something we're going to start with like 5 minutes to go on a podcast.
But and again, a lot of people jumping on board and thinking does this cause that, everything, and it is really important, but it's important to put it into context. And sometimes a little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
Very much so.
So methylation, we were talking about epigenetic modification earlier. That's one of the main forms of epigenetic modification. So it literally is, here's your gene, here's all of your little bases, your code, and a methyl group comes along and sticks onto some of them. And it's like a barrier, like can't get through the tunnel, so this gene doesn't get turned on. So your body is constantly turning on and turning off genes by changing the methylation. So yes, you need methyl factors, and a lot of those will come from the methylation, MTHFR, and methyl groups and folate cycle, basically. That also is involved in DNA synthesis, so that's why it can be important in terms of fertility. And one of the things we look for example, is on a full blood count, whether your red blood cells look normal. And that can be a bit of a key thing. So
is in the wobbly edges stuff, that sort of thing, or
it doesn't have wobbly edges. So red blood cells turn over about every 120 days. They're relatively speaking, they turn over pretty fast, so it's a good marker of it. And what happens in a cell when it's about to divide is it makes double the amount of DNA, and it gets a bit bigger, and then it kind of separates into two nuclei, and then it basically divides into two cells. So what happens when your DNA synthesis slows down a little bit, and your folate cycle is quite slow, is that your red cells kind of get a bit bigger, and then it doesn't happen, and they get stuck. So we end up with slightly larger than normal
That's
red
when
blood
you get large red blood cells.
That's not the only reason.
There's lots of other reasons.
But it's a soft sign, as we
That's
call
really
it. So we can just look at people's. A lot of people will come into us with general kind of GP tests. And that's something we can off the bat look at and go, we might want to look at your.
That's
folate.
the mean corpuscular volume.
Very good. Very good.
There you go. Somebody's doing this blood test work. Okay, that's fascinating. And so methylation. So it's involved obviously. So in transposing your genes into RNA, or at some level involved in that. So it's controlling or influencing that process. It's also involved in at some level in phase 2 liver detoxification as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, again, so when we're trying to detoxify, whether it's drugs, caffeine, even normal hormones that we have every day, and we're trying to get rid of it. So our kind of waste disposal system is we collect things in our liver. Our liver adds a molecule onto it, whether it be a methyl or there's loads of different types. And there's large lists of what gets what. And it basically makes it more soluble. And then you usually will transfer it either to your digestive system to be excreted in the stool, or maybe via urine, depending. So it's basically uses different molecules, and it can use a methyl group to make it more soluble, and it allows it to be excreted.
So kale, it's like the most popular single food on the planet. It has to be at the moment. I mean, like a Western world. Like if you cleave the world in half and you take like
in your pals,
from
maybe.
my little bubble, this little half stack bubble. Yeah, with any Whole Foods in the States, etc. If you see the word kale on it, it's got to be healthy.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that kale is seen as being so healthy, right, is because it provides some of the key factors in this kind of methylation, the demand for methylation that most of them
and all of those kind of crucifers will help all of this detoxification process. Okay. Absolutely. So you have a high demand for crucifers because you have potentially
we're going to like caveat this quite heavily.
Okay, well let's start with the first one they came up with. Okay. So there's two genes that they're talking about. You have fast activation. So you're a fast detoxifier of chemicals that come from when you cook meat. Okay. Do you eat meat?
Yes, but rarely. Like really rarely.
Suiting this. And obviously it's the higher temperature that you cook them at. So if you have a casserole or a stew, that's much safer than if you're grilling or frying or whatever, right?
Yeah, which is
but some of those, but if it's rare. No, actually, so you're okay on this because you're a fast detoxifier of those chemicals, so you can kind of get rid of them fast, because they're not going to hang around in your system too long.
So those the polyamines and those sorts of things? What are
they called? Heterocyclic amines.
Yeah, exactly.
So now I want to say here's the key. So these two genes have been tested in a study, or 3 studies in case of DNA Fit.
Okay.
Looking at meat.
Okay.
Haven't looked at
anything
else. Just meat. So that's why I came back with really like this picture of steak and meat, you know. Like, well, we can say that. In 20 years' time, they'll probably know way more about this. You know, these CYP genes, they do loads of things. There's no way that this one gene just does this. With meat. Exactly. But on the other, so that's where you were saying I was a bit contradictory because you're a fast detoxifier in one hand. In that one study where they looked at that, you passed the test where you can deal with meat. But in the other one, which I have, is your antioxidants.
Not
so
so
that's
good. Can we put that on the screen actually?
Can we which one?
Can we flip onto it on the screen? So where is it? It's not that one.
Oh, this is hooked up, is it?
No, it's not. It's going to be actually, but you guys will actually see this. You can't see it right now. Sorry. So
these are your antioxidants, and the one previously, this guy, the glutathione F transferase. You have a deletion in one of them.
Baddie. My parents didn't do me a lot of favours when it came to detoxification.
Let's be clear.
You're just trying to. It's like my mother has paid you off to like go easy on me.
This is all nonsense. It's just a waste of money. Glutathione S transferase is a group of antioxidants, and they are extremely important. This is one of them. So there's like 15 others. Or
of the glutathione transferases. Okay, and these are like shuttling proteins or something for glutathione.
Yeah, exactly. So they use glutathione in order to protect you, to kind of reduce carcinogens, toxic environmental stuff, which probably you're not highly exposed to, would you say?
Urban environment, I don't know.
True. And cycling a lot, I suppose.
Yeah, cycling a lot actually.
But you probably eat a fair amount of organic food.
Loads.
Yeah. In your workplace, you're probably not.
I know. Once you just stay inside the hopsack, I'm safe. Like all of you guys. Very cheesy, sorry. Apologies.
And non-smoker, not a big exposure. But if you were...
I have my bold moments. I won't deny it. I have my bold moments.
Okay. If you were... Is this the time to discuss it? Or?
No. Everyone's got their bold moments. We're just something... Everyone's human. That's all.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm human like everyone else.
So you have... In one of your GSTs, one of them, you have a deletion, which has been linked to, I don't even want to say it,
Go on,
but the higher incidence of cancer. So you just want to make sure that you've got plenty of antioxidants in your diet, because there's the enzymatic antioxidants, which is the ones that they've tested for here. Glutathione S transferase. I'm going to go on to the other ones. Your superoxide dismutase, which is this SOD2, your catalase, and your glutathione. Why can't I think of the name? Peroxidases. So you have a homozygous SNP or whatever for the SOD one as well, superoxide dismutase, and maybe slightly decreased on your catalase as well. So you're enzymatic, and again, of these ones, there's lots of other ones, so there's a lot of redundancy in the human body, but of your enzymatic ones, you've probably got a lower level of antioxidant activity.
Interesting.
So you also have just pure vitamin based, so vitamin C and vitamin E kind of work just by themselves. They also they work together. So vitamin C is water soluble, vitamin E is fat soluble. But they don't need other proteins and stuff. They can work by themselves as antioxidants.
Okay.
So you essentially want to make sure you're getting in
loads
of fruit and vegetables, raw veg,
eating the rainbow,
almonds, salmon, avocado, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Hang on.
I'm sure you are.
Oh my God,
and then generally supporting your liver, like I said, the cruciferous vegetables, the allium foods, the garlic, the onions, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Nice.
So, and then not overloading your liver with caffeine,
alcohol, sugar, blah, blah, blah.
Medications.
And medications, of course,
And if you were to go on medications, bearing in mind that you might want to take the minimum dose recommended, or you actually might be a slower metabolizer of them. So I don't know if you've ever experienced this.
No.
I think I'm a bit of a slow metabolizer as well.
Oh, interesting.
Because if I was to take painkillers, let's say if I went in, was having kids or whatever, like Solpadeine makes me off my head.
Really?
Oh, I can't take it. Like I can't break down codeine fast enough.
Really?
It's like morphine. Like
sits around in your body and just makes you woozy.
Yeah, totally.
Wow, that's interesting.
So,
so you take a tiny amount.
And even I think my mother would be a slow metabolizer. She sometimes takes like just a sleeping pill to help her. It's an over-the-counter one or whatever.
And you get 48 hours already and knock on the door. You're like, Mom?
No, the dosage is 2. To get, and she takes a quarter of one.
Oh my God!
And that would work for her.
Okay, she's a conservative lady anyway. I'm guessing.
But do you know what I'm saying? So you probably don't need quite as much medication as the next person, because it will hang around.
To have the same.
Similar to caffeine, you might get a better kick out of caffeine.
Smaller amounts. Yeah, that's fascinating. Okay. Yeah, caffeine is one of the ones that I nearly gave up pretty much about 6 months ago, and I've sort of been doing one coffee every sort of 2 weeks. I noticed anyway, even though I'm a fast metabolizer of caffeine, I think it's down there somewhere, I don't do well on caffeine when there's stress present. Nobody does, I don't think. Most of us maybe don't realise it until we stop taking it, and then we're like, oh, I'm human again. But I really noticed the difference when I stopped, that when I do take it, I enjoy it, and I take it not when I'm requiring it. I'm not like staying up late to get some work done. Then I say taking it as a weekend enjoyable drink, and it's a very different experience then. And it's a much more it's what it's for really. I think really Ethiopians did not sit on their computers for 24 hours to try and get whatever reports and PowerPoint done, and coffee wasn't invented for that.
And you really should be kind of using food as
exactly.
Short-term stimulant. And then the other one that you have then is the MTHFR. Homozygous, so double mutation. So you're meant to have C allele and you have T's. So you will have you'll have a slowdown of your folate cycle. Which essentially makes all the methyl factors. And leads into the DNA synthesis pathway, right? So a couple of things. This is where the controversy. What do we do about it? People think, what do we do? So I don't know, was it a year ago, maybe more, that the whole taking activated folate was the thing. So it's bypassing the job that the MTHFR even has to do, and it's just giving you the activated form instead. Loads of people will have side effects to that, jittery, nervous
taking the methylated versions? Really?
I
haven't come across any yet, but that's fascinating.
Part of that was they just took way too much of it.
Okay,
and it shouldn't be kind of book of chemistry. But the other thing is it was never tried and tested. It just kind of came on the market. And that makes sense. Let's just take that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not the way to go about it. No. So the safety profile really isn't there. So we don't really recommend it. If you really want to take it, I would take it kind of every second day.
That's how I do it. I kind of like do it 3 to 4 times a week. And like most supplements, I think, to be honest with you, and we keep telling, really ad hoc. Like at most, if there's a really significant suggestion that and it's rare to have somebody actually come in and done tests to actually show that they do need something. But if somebody comes in with a really strong suggestion that they have a need extra need for fish oils or vitamin D or whatever,
they don't eat fish.
There's an obvious one. But kind of say like take it 4 days a week, take it for a month, and then take it off for a month, with something like that. But I think people are beginning to embrace that idea. That they're treating supplements like foods rather than supplements like pharmacological things. They're kind of like these are just high potency foods. That's basically what it is.
Exactly. So actually now a lot of the research is going into how can we make your MTHFR work as well as it can. So it's just a slight. It's not you're not missing it altogether. It's just slightly slower than everybody else.
Okay.
And it also has a lower.
I feel like the slow kid in school. Like somebody's talking to Finn. It's not just that you can't spell well. You just spell slower. It's your parents' fault.
So what we want to do then is just provide as many of the cofactors as possible to kind of help your MTHFR along.
Okay,
and that's the much safer approach. And there's a lot of research now, and actually there's universities in the north. I was just at a Nutrition Society conference. They're talking a lot about riboflavin, so that's vitamin B2. So that's, and that actually correlates with your levels of homocysteine. So homocysteine is kind of like your waste product when you're not using your folate cycle properly. So that kind of accumulates. They used to think that that was causative of things like increased cardiovascular risk. Actually, they think now it's just a bit of a marker. They don't even know if it's causative or just a marker of it.
But it is a pro-oxidative thing, right?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, there's a lot of controversy about that. They don't really know what it does.
But B2 is a corollary?
So, but B2 will correlate with it, and that's because B2 is all part of that cycle. And if you give your MTHFR essentially enough B2, it'll do its job better.
That's fascinating.
You also want B6 and B12.
Yes.
Now, we never really suggest supplementing with individual Bs because they're all rely off each other. And you also obviously want to take enough folic acid to keep that whole chain running. So just take a B complex. So you should just take a B complex.
Fair enough.
You know, but again, you're probably, and all of that only applied in people that were either deficient in the B2, which you are probably not given your diet, and in people with the TT version of which you have.
That's a B2 thing I never heard about.
Yeah. So if you're not eating well for a while, or take a B complex intermittently. That includes obviously folic acid.
Bang on. Thank you so much for this. It's been really interesting for me to look at this and to kind of pick a little bit into what might be going on underneath the surface. And it's one of the first of kind of, I want to do a lot of homeostasis testing just for fun, really, more than anything else.
It is a lot of fun.
It's an awful lot of fun.
It's very expensive.
Well, we're talking one a year. We're going 1 a year at this stage. So yeah, I like it. And for anybody who does want to do, you guys now, you at Glenville Nutrition, you don't use DNA Fit anymore? You do use DNA Fit?
We don't. We've moved to nutrigenomics.
Nutrigenomics, okay.
Pretty much the same. And in fact, they could be the ones who do the pain tolerance.
Okay. Damn it. So I missed my pain tolerance. Oh. Yeah, so there was lots of other very interesting things that came up in my kind of exercise response stuff as well. We'll get into that. Maybe it's for another time if we have a chance to get Carol and her twin sister as well, who also did the test with us. We might get a chance to sit down and do that again. For now, I'm conscious that you have to go and collect your kitties. And I'm going to make you late, and that's bad. That's on me. But thank you so much for coming in. And anybody who does want to contact you guys, glenvillenutrition.ie. And they can book appointments if you want to go down this DNA route. If you have maybe, you know, to be fair, DNA analysis is a very, very small part of what Ciara and Heather do in their practice, so maybe it's misrepresented, but it was just interesting to have Kieran's insight so that I'd understand, dummy brain would understand something more about what he was getting on this analysis. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
Bye,
My pleasure.
Cheers. Nice.